So, good morning and welcome to the Standing Committee's meeting for Wednesday, June 22nd, 2022. All council meetings will continue to be live streamed on the city's website. Our first order of business is roll call. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Reverend Burgess.
Here.
Mr. Coghill.
Here.
Ms. Gross. Mr. Kraus. Mr. O'Connor. Mrs. Kell Smith. Ms. Strasburger.
Here.
Mr. Wilson. Mr. Lavelle, Chair.
Here.
4 members.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm here. I couldn't get my earbuds plugged in.
5 members present.
Me too, Mr. Chair. I apologize. I'm here as well. Thank you.
6 members present.
Thank you very much. Our next order of business is public comment. I would like to remind all speakers that the rules of council state that comments are limited to matters of concern, official action, or deliberation, which are or may be before city council, and profanity will not be permitted. Once you are called, please restate your name and neighborhood for the record. You will be given 3 minutes to speak. Our first registered speaker is Les Ludwig.
I didn't realize I was up.
Yep.
My name is Les Ludwig from Squirrel Hill, and you know who I am. I'm the guy who brought a couple $1 million to the table that you didn't know existed. And I'm sitting with a list of 11 ideas waiting in a contract for action from the law department, who's blocked it since March 10th of this year. I don't know whether it's by intention or whether it's by accident, but the year is going by, and therefore the opportunity for more money than anyone ever dreamt of coming from non-tax revenue resources that exist and are unrecognized by this council. Unrecognized. The money's laying in the street and you don't know how to get it. I do. And I'm waiting for the contract to be signed that there will be no that there wouldn't be a circumvention attempt, because government, generally speaking, doesn't want to pay for conceptual thinking. They want to steal it and use it for the benefit of the public. And I'm saying it's wrong. You've been wrong for hundreds of years. You want to include everyone so that you get the wealth that's out there with people who want to do the right thing and are willing to make the effort and spend $50, $60 on a cab to come down here and talk to you. If you don't wise up, you'll have one less taxpayer. So yes, am I angry? You're darn right I am. 30 years of coming down here without recognition. No one picked up a phone and said, Les, what you done was great. Maybe I wouldn't be angry. So it's up to you. Play whatever game you want. I don't need you. Thank God I have enough income. I don't need you. You need me. Government always needs more money. So that's saying it loud and clear, and I thank you for your attention. And there's a letter that's been handed in for distribution to each of you covering the subject. I thank you.
Thank you. Our next registered speaker is Robert Palmieri.
Hello.
You went back on mute. There you
What was
go.
that?
Yep.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Grew up in Pittsburgh, Central Catholic High School, born and bred. Just looking at this Oakland Crossing project, a couple questions that I'm concerned about traffic and stormwater management. I have yet to be able to see a concept plan or any kind of a, drawing to scale, looking at the proposed project and looking at the project, wondering if there's any specific engineering studies being planned for or that are completed about those two items that I highlighted, or any other. Could be under the NEPA process or just independent. But if you could help me out with some information on those, I would appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Our next registered speaker is Dr. Ronald Lynn Miller.
Dr. Ronald N. Miller, Belsuver, and I'm the founder of the Center for Global Studies International Interdisciplinary, which is a corporation in Pennsylvania and New York. I also have a residence in Timbuktu, Mali, where there was a university long before the Europeans. The Global Intelligence Society, U.S. National Candidate 2024 for the presidency. I'm a member of the American Physical Society. In June 2022, week 3 is GIS African Intelligence Week. Dr. Willie Hobbs Moore, anybody here know Mr. Lavelle, who she is or was? No? She was the first black African-American PhD in physics, 1972. Positive intersectional identity, right? Concern of Pittsburgh City Council is with stop and frisk. Concern of myself and the GIS is with pro and anti information on stop and frisk. Council heard an anti-stop frisk research specialist, 14 June 2022, whom the council meeting presider Burgess called a treasure. But this informational treasure did not reference the primary local and national pro-SF information, which is the U.S. Supreme Court decision, Terry versus Ohio, 1968. It is the law which ruled that SF is not unconstitutional, and it is useful to police all over the United States, including in Pittsburgh. So on stop and frisk, this council, the treasured expert and his sponsor from the Black Political Empowerment Group are, in my view, lawless and one-sided. But the U.S. governmental, legislative, and judicial systems are not one-sided, but are oppositionally two-sided. So where is council's pro and con, pro and anti, regarding the Black Lives Matter organization? Not the idea, but the organization. And critical race theory. Here's a reference. It's the primary reference, Kimberly Crenshaw, Mapping the Margins, Intersectionality, Identity Politics, and Violence Against Women of Color, Stanford Law Review, 1991. The intersections of Kirkpatrick with Center and Wiley are among the most, this defines one of the most important areas in the city of Pittsburgh. And what is the interinstitutional, intersectional K-C.W linkage regarding BLM.org and CRT? I will pick this up next week.
Thank you. Our next registered speaker is Bernadette Mosey. You should just be able to pull that one mic to you. Yeah, the smaller one should be able to turn towards her.
Okay.
There you go.
I had something all planned to talk about the Beachview revitalization mess, but something came up yesterday. My name is Bernadette Mosey. I am a proud mother of my oldest all the way down to my youngest. 4 kids all serve the city as lifeguards. I was a lifeguard working in the Catskills of upstate New York. My mother was a lifeguard. We are not leading or caring about these kids enough. I'm dressed like this today so you can see what sun damage is. I am a 3.5 malignant melanoma survivor. My youngest, who is a lifeguard currently, fears for my safety. She prefers to cover, not just for the sun, but for other reasons. She was told yesterday, she called me in tears because she had to uncover. That's wrong. I reached out to a Muslim doctor that I worked with at Mercy Hospital and asked her what she does with her daughters. She showed me online. I purchased that shirt. My daughter's wearing it, trust me, and she's not going to get fired. They have SPF 50 clothing that could be a choice to these kids. We're missing an entire Muslim community of teens that could be working. Why? This doctor's daughters traveled to Michigan, where they can be lifeguards and dress appropriately. Our Olympic swimmers wear bathing suits down to their wrists and to their ankles. Why are we not protecting our children? It doesn't matter if it's from the sun. It doesn't matter if it's for religious purposes. It doesn't matter if it's a personal matter. They should have that choice. We are really behind the times and we are hurting for lifeguards. Let's get on the boat and make this happen ASAP. And again, my daughter is wearing, it's delivered today, and nobody better even try to write her up because, quite frankly, I think I would have a civil rights lawsuit. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next registered speaker is Naomi Mullen.
Shady trees, not shady deals in Bon Air. First, do no harm is not just a rule of medicine. Government shall not harm the people or can be held accountable. Law practicing and infliction of emotional distress has occurred against Bon Air. Those who oppose the property owners of Bon Air do so at their own peril. The Pennsylvania State Constitution says that government was created for the peace, safety, and happiness of we, the people. Decisions and actions that harm people are not acceptable. There are elected and appointed officials that have proven themselves to be enemies of Bon Air. That is not advisable. On June 20th, 2022, the detrimental Bon Air school bill worsened into being a disruptive and nuisance property. We have objected to apartments or anything other than a green space to replace the school. Tear it down. The building is a magnet to youth who broke in on top of trespassing. 3 of the 7 had to be escorted out of the building. Tear it down. Other neighborhoods have been blighted with worse. Do not allow it to happen to Bon Air. The outcry to the school board has proven futile. Put pressure on them to sell it to the city for $1. Tear it down. Mayor Gamey, Councilman Coghill, and State Representative Benham have all pledged to help Bon Air get rid of our detrimental school property and replace it with a green space. The Michael Mullen Memorial Green Space will be beneficial to all ages and stages of people. A beautiful, calming place to enjoy fruit trees, flowers, and birds. Will the rest of City Council promote the peace, safety, and happiness of the Bon Air neighborhood? We, the property owners, say no to reapportionment. It is thoroughly rejected by we, the people of Bon Air. It would only create harm for us. There is no benefit. The answer is no. The Michael Mullen Memorial Green Space is a partial reparation for the injuries we've endured. Shady trees, not shady deals in Bon Air.
Thank you. Our next registered speaker is Elena Zaitsoff.
My name is Elena Zaitzoff. I live in the Oak Cliff neighborhood of South Oakland. I'm here today representing the Oak Cliff Community Organization, OCO, of which I am vice president. OCO is a registered community organization and has submitted a letter which I trust you will read before making any decisions, as well as viewing the video of the 3D model showing the negative effect of this ordinance on the surrounding residential neighborhoods. OCO is asking that you do not pass ordinance 2021-1906, not because we're against development or progress, but because development needs to be done responsibly and with regard to the existing residential neighborhoods and impact on the residents. These are the topics where our most important issues lie, details of which are in our letter. Heights, lengths, massings. Buildings will be immensely out of scale with the adjacent residential areas, and there's no context for these mammoth buildings. 2, loss of residential compatibility and removal of the Oakland Public Realm D. This will place those immense buildings closer to homes. These 2 issues will result in Oak Cliff being walled off along the Boulevard of the Allies, and Coltart Avenue will become a canyon. 3, Halkett Street should retain its current zoning and be removed from this legislation. 4, eventual closing of Zelina Street by adding left turn shows a lack of understanding of Oakland traffic flow. Zelina Street needs to remain open permanently. 5, uses. Most of what the developer desires, more density, a grocery store, better pedestrian experience, can be done with the current OPRD, except not to the extreme dimensions Walnut Capital wants. Educational classroom space and transit facility do not belong in UCMU. 6, affordable housing. It needs to be tied to AMI to be truly affordable housing, not vouchers that may conveniently not be available. 7, performance point system. Giving points for what code requires and not being able to get maximum height without using points that are most beneficial to residents is not acceptable. The point system needs a complete review with resident input and a reasoned approach. 8, all of this leads to a loss of neighborhood character and feeling of being in Oakland. 9, there has been a lack of regard for resident input. 10, it does not meet the criteria for zoning changes as set forth in the municipal code for Pittsburgh. The Oak Cliff Community Organization is asking that you reject ordinance 2021-1906. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mark Olinietz. Mark, I saw you come off. You can speak, Mark. You're unmuted. You can begin speaking. Okay. We'll come back to Mark. Let's move on to Andrea Borkowitz.
Hi, sorry. My name is Andrea Boykowicz. I live at 3439 Parkview Avenue in Central Oakland, and I'm the Assistant Director at Oakland Planning and Development Corporation. I'm here to ask you again, as you discuss and consider Council Bill 2021-1906, to avoid setting a bad precedent by passing this bill. Instead, you should pass the UCMU zoning that the Planning Commission is recommending to you as part of the Oakland Plan. For those of you who might still believe 2021-1906 is necessary or appropriate, please believe me when I tell you it is neither. The UCMU zoning that is on its way to you from the Planning Commission incorporates the zoning changes proposed by this bill, so passing 2021-1906 is not necessary in order to upzone Halkett, and it was never necessary to support dense mixed-use development on the Boulevard of the Allies. The process by which this bill was introduced and by which it has been amended and negotiated is, for lack of a better term, deeply weird. and approval of this bill is approval of that arcane and questionable process. Pass this bill and you signal to your own neighborhoods and residential communities that they are for sale and that the zoning that protects them is subject to change at political whim, that residential opposition is unimportant, that neighborhood planning rationale is unnecessary, and that the Department of City Planning is a political tool. These are terrible messages to send to your constituents and to your colleagues in city government. At last week's meeting, a last-minute amendment extending the allowable sidewalk-facing facade length from 400 feet to 425 feet was passed amidst confusion and against the recommendations of the Planning Commission. If action is taken on this bill today, it should be to send it back to the Planning Commission for reconsideration or to table it indefinitely. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Bill Schlachner.
Good morning, everybody. I'm sure you're getting tired of me coming up from Mount Washington talking about Airbnbs. And I keep coming up here because it's an important issue. But before I go on to that topic, I would like to make a comment as a previous lifeguard myself. Sunscreen is so important and safety is so important, and having the choice to have a good bathing suit that protects you is important because the long-term effects of sun are definitely real. I can testify to that. On the Airbnb topic, I have spoken at length many times and written all of you about the need to have an amendment regarding the Airbnb to be a primary residence. This is super common in many, many cities across the country, in Philadelphia, in Denver. I'm traveling out to Seattle this weekend for a marathon. I was looking up their legislation just out of curiosity, and they allow a primary residence as well as a secondary unit for an Airbnb. The reason why primary residence is so important is because in a lot of these cities, and sometimes things happen a little slower in Pittsburgh, as you all know, corporations are buying up communities, and it is happening now as we speak on Mount Washington. They're buying up regular houses and turning them into an Airbnb strictly for their profits. And they are kicking out long-term residents of that community, and is creating instability in the community. When you start turning over the community over to the corporations, you create more instability. And that is not what the goal of the Airbnb legislation is to create stability in the community. And I did read the amendment that you proposed, Bobby Wilson. It was very weak in its language. Didn't really add much. In fact, it also took out the usage around multi-units, leaving it very gray. The multi-units is a really big issue because if you have a place that's 30, 40 units all around Airbnbs, that is really a hotel. And neighbors, I can tell you definitively in Mount Washington where this is happening on multi-units, do not want that, because it's not zoned for a hotel. So you need to do the right thing for the community and add the two amendments, which are around the primary residence, and also really reconsider the usage of a multi-unit on Airbnbs. And lastly, as an aside, I was here for the whole standing committee last week, and it was a little bit disappointing, that whole back and forth around the whole sponsorship of the bill and this and that. Just y'all need to get your act together and be a team on this, because you're all Democrats. We don't need more confusion around democracy in our system. And lastly, there was a man here that spoke. He was homeless. He brought his bags here. His name was William. He was requesting help from City Council around naming issues, and he needs support from City Council in the services. I request that you assist that man if you haven't already. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last registered speaker is Amy Teresa Comportere. I apologize if I messed up your name. I don't see her online, and I don't believe she's in person. With that, is there any other speakers with us in chambers wishing to speak? Please come forward.
My name is Yvonne F. Brown. I live in the Hill District at 715 Bracken Ridge Street. Now, I brought this sign yesterday and I didn't show it, but I want to make sure I show it today. And this sign is, whenever you started the meeting the last time, this is in 2017, Oprah's Walk. This was the woman that started to make Juneteenth a national holiday. 2017, she finally got it made this year. She was Oprah's Walk. She even had a website because she was walking to Washington, D.C. with the petitions. When she came to my church, I went and spoke to her. I told her I was an advocate for children, youth, family, hospital workers, and seniors. She asked me to please come down and ask you to back this petition, and she made it a law. She was here in Bethel. Do you understand? I met this. She's a little lady, talks very softly, but she's very determined. You see, she was. From 2017 to 2020, she got this Juneteenth a national holiday. The children need to understand why she was pushing for this. What had happened is the slaves had been freed 2 years before this. There was a sergeant that came, it was an army general that came and freed them. After Abraham Lincoln had even wrote the Emancipation Proclamation. So for 2 years they were working as slaves and were not taught about what's happening or what has happened. That's why I come down here, City Council, because you need to know these things that are happening in our community. Also today, I want to deviate. Today is Nakoya, my grandbaby's birthday. She is 21 years old. She was raised here in City Council. She came to every meeting as a baby. The councilman, you know, sir, sometimes I only got 3 minutes and I try to put everything I can, and sometimes it might be confusing to you. So I try to come back the next week if I can straighten it out. I want you to understand that I feel that this is my chambers, me and every citizen that comes in here. Also, I must say that I was sent down to City Council by Fannie Brown, an 88-year-old lady who's being terrorized up in Katy with Irvis. This lady said, please come down and tell you, because we actually have a terrorist in there. She comes in, she changes her look. She actually killed someone before she killed my daughter's best friend. And she's in the building terrorizing us.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers with us in chambers? If not, I do want to try to go back to Mark Olinietz. You're currently on mute. You're now. I saw your hand go up, but you can begin speaking. It may be your own settings while we can't hear you. All right. Yeah, he may have an older version. I'm not sure what's happening. So we'll need to move forward. And if he's still with us at the end of the meeting, I'll try to go back to him again. Just so council members are aware, I do expect us to be joined by Deputy Mayor Jake Pollock. When he shows in chambers, I'll go out of order to take that bill. But our first committee of the day is...
Councilman, I apologize. I'm here on Zoom.
Oh, I apologize. I did not see you. So with that, we'll go out of order, and I want to take Bill 1906, which is, I apologize, on page 7.
Bill 1906, ordinance amended the Pittsburgh Code, Title 9, Zoning Code, Article 2, Base Zoning Districts, Article 5, Use Regulations, Chapter 911, Primary Uses, Section 91102, Use Table in Section 91104, Use Standard, Article 6, Development Standards, Chapter 915, Chapter 91504, Environmental Performance Standards, and Chapter 919, Signs, and Chapter 922, Development Review Procedures, 922, to create a new urban center mixed-use zoning district and related zoning regulations.
Need a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second with discussion, please.
Sorry. Discussion. Councilman Kraus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members have before you an amendment that tightens up the language that was offered last week about limiting the expansion of the additional footage to grocery store general with a gross with a gross floor area in excess of 15,000 square feet. Excuse me. So it tightens that up, and I would like to offer that up as an amendment to the bill, please. So motion to amend.
Need a second? Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The bill is amended. Any further discussion on the bill as amended?
So, Mr. Chair, may I invite Deputy Mayor Pollock to the table?
Yes.
I'd like to. Good morning, Director and Deputy Mayor. Nice to see you. Thanks for being here.
Councilman. Jake Pollock, Director of the Office of Senate Budget, for the record.
And I'd like to give you the floor for any additional comment you may have.
Sure. I think, largely the general topic of this legislation was discussed last week. I'm sure members will have questions, so I'm happy to answer those. But I'd just specifically like to address the amendment which you just offered, which was developed in consultation with the zoning administrator to arrive at what you had indicated last week, Councilman Kraus, that you had hoped to see, which is a more limited extension of the building length to only apply to grocery store uses within a UCMU zone. I think that that is appropriate and perhaps an appropriately more focused way of approaching that issue, given the somewhat unique loading and unloading needs, not just of the proposed grocery store at the site that is proposed for a site here in Oakland, but generally anywhere else a UCMU zone may in the future appear. Grocery stores are an allowed use in this zoning classification and are in fact incentivized by the bonus points system in UCMU. So making this allowance is, I think, a way to arrive at the goals that have been laid out without overly broadly extending building lengths to other parts of the zone. So I just wanted to speak to the specifics of the amendment and to make sure council members were aware that it was drafted in consultation. Actually, it was prepared by the zoning administrator as a way to arrive at the goal that you had laid out, Councilman. Beyond that, I'm happy to answer any further questions that members have for discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director. Mr. Chair, I have no further questions at this time. I'll turn the floor over.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gross?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to reiterate many of the comments that I made a week ago. No member here at this table sponsored this bill. Bills come over two ways from an administration, they come over either from an administration, right? There's literally a mayor's agenda that is required by Home Rule Charter to be emailed or delivered to the city clerk by noon on Friday. This bill, 2021, from the year 2021, Bill 1906, came over in Mayor Peduto's legislative packet. Last week, there was some discussion about, or some obfuscation, I think, about the difference between the word sponsor and introduce and initiate, and whether council, of course, is the arbiter of zoning, and that we have to vote on it, which is why I'll be voting no today on 1906. But this was a zoning map amendment sponsored by a mayor, and that is not allowed by our ordinance. An administration can initiate zoning changes, like our planning department is busy doing right now, right? Our planning department works on our comprehensive plan. Once they work on suggestions for zoning changes and map changes, that department has to then take it to public discussion in the planning commission. If the planning commission recommends it, and only if the planning commission recommends it, does that legislation then come to the city council for our discussion? And that is not the path that this legislation took, right? The only other path that's allowed is for a council member to be the sponsor of the bill, as we've seen many times as well. I've personally sponsored map changes. They've gone through all of the process that needed to happen for public process. We've held and referred to planning commission, et cetera. But no member here sponsored this bill. And it did not go through the rigor that it should have before it got to our table. And so again, as some people in public comment have said, and I have said repeatedly, I do not believe that this bill has a legal path. Second point, having seen zoning legislation sponsored by the planning department and gone through all the appropriate steps, like the riverfront interim planning overlay district, and then the permanent base zoning changes to the riverfront, which most members here, not all members, but a lot of members on council experienced. That was not just a bunch of words on a piece of paper sent over from a mayor's packet on a Friday to council without proper process through the planning department and the planning commission before it got to our table. Moreover, again, this is the second point, we were very careful about how we made amendments and whether amendments could be made after the public process of planning commission. Similarly with inclusionary zoning, we talked to many attorneys, we had many discussions about what could be amended and what could not be amended, and what constitutes substantive amendments. If the amendments are substantive, they must go back from the city council table back to planning commission. I think that we have seen now repeated amendments to this legislation, and that's fine. Council should be able to amend, but that it resets the public process back to planning commission. And so I think that, with members supporting substantial amendments here, that is the next step. This bill goes back to planning commission. Third point, number 3. Since last week's standing committee and the amendments that were made at the table, I revisited in fact, you know what? I'm going to do this once again, just so you guys don't think I'm fibbing or something. Here I go again. I'm going to share screen. I want this one. I hope this is the one. What do you see? Yeah, do you see this here? This is September 21st, 2021. That was a Friday. This is the Friday packet from Mayor Peduto to our city clerk. And what I'm highlighting here, number 1.02, because it doesn't have a number from our clerk yet, is Mayor Peduto sending over the text of this legislation, 1906. Anyway, back to third point. I reviewed the packet planning sends. So what happened wrongly was that the mayor sent that over. We held and sent for review and recommendation from Planning Commission. Planning Commission did that, public process, took public comment, took a vote, sent it over only with conditions, right? And I believe that the legislation in front of us does not match the Planning Commission's recommendations. And just a couple of things, and I have, I do want to acknowledge that I don't represent this area. I haven't been at the table in discussions. There's background noise from Councilman Burgess. If you could mute your mic, that would be helpful. Thank you. That there is a lot of detail that happens that in my own district, when I'm engaged with the conversation on a bill every day with the community, I admit that I've not been part of the kind of daily conversation and feedback from the community, but we've heard a fair bit of public comment, both at the Planning Commission and here at Council. And for example, one of the conditions for the positive recommendation was to limit the building lengths to 400 feet. And I believe that the bill in front of us has 425. There are lots of details that I'm sure that Councilman Kraus knows that I don't, because he's, again, been involved in a much, much closer daily conversation about it with the constituents and with all the interested parties. But that's one example, that it looks to me that the bill as amended in front of us would need a supermajority of council to override these conditions, basically, because without meeting the conditions, it's a negative recommendation. And so for those reasons, I believe this bill should probably be, at least, I would say, to be tabled, because there has been a parallel path. This is the fourth point. Our own planning department was doing all of the things that are supposed to happen by code. They were crafting an Oakland plan. I believe that public commenters have been referring to it as the UCM or something, I'm not sure. So the Oakland plan has been on this crazy parallel path as it should be happening. And this, to me, looked like an effort by a mayor to get around it. And so now that they're at this like convergence point of timing, and the Oakland plan has cleared Planning Commission and may have arrived at our desk already. In fact, let me ask Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk, if you're there, have you received the Oakland plan from Planning Commission for Council's review?
Have we received the Oakland plan?
Correct. It has cleared Planning Commission. Has it been sent to Council yet? Have you received it? Is a zoning amendment from Planning Commission?
No.
Yes or no?
No.
No? Okay, but you will be receiving it any day. So, because then it comes to Council, right? And that's the path that's supposed to happen. Planning Department does its work, not developers and their attorneys. Planning Department does their work. It gets reviewed by Planning Commission for zoning changes, and then it's referred to Council. And that's happening. So I think that we should probably do what other public commenters have suggested in not pushing this bill through, and doing showing respect to the community, the Planning Department, and the Planning Commission, and holding this pending our review of the Oakland plan. So I will be voting no today, as well as I did last week. And that I'll stop there, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other members for discussion? Seeing none, I just want to.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilwoman.
I was waiting to see if there would be any response to that, so apologies for the delay. For my part, I will say that I too share the concerns that we've heard from many different people about the path that this legislation took and its origins. And I don't wish to see that replicated again. I'm grateful to Councilman Kraus for him and his staff and the countless hours he's put into this to make it as positive a bill as possible, and for Director Pollack and the Gainey administration for stepping in and for continuing to work with community members and reaching the agreement that we see before us. So that is what puts me at ease in some way to, despite the flawed process up until this point, to support this. The main reason I'm supporting this is that this city desperately needs more dense housing along transit corridors. We need more housing, period. And what better place for this than in the second largest metro area in the Commonwealth, Oakland, especially where we have an increasing population. And as we've seen from the coverage of our stalled rental registry program, a need to get different types of residents, but especially students who are living off campus, out of dangerous and unhealthy living conditions and situations and into healthy units. Everyone deserves a healthy and safe place to live. And too many of the rental units in Oakland are not that. More housing for more different types of people is what is needed. And a grocery store and other amenities. This is the exact right type of project for this area. I hope that despite the fact that we're not voting on actual proposals for buildings, we're voting on a rezoning. I hope that those who are all part of this redevelopment keep their word and develop what they're committing to develop, and that we do indeed see the density along this corridor that has been promised and committed to, and that we so desperately need. So just wanted to say a few words about why I'm supporting this today. And thanks to those who have been really doing the work to bring people together and to make this happen. I appreciate it.
Thank you. President Smith?
Thank you. I just want to say that I do appreciate all the feedback that we've had, and I appreciate that Councilwoman Gross is such an advocate for the community, but I also know Councilman Kraus is a strong advocate for his community and has been doing a tremendous job trying to find some middle ground here. And I think the Gainey administration has done a great job stepping in and trying to bring some sense, make some sense of this all. As somebody who was born and raised in Oakland, I can tell you that I've spoken to a lot of residents who haven't come forward in terms of public comment. A lot of people that put their blood, sweat, and tears in making Oakland what it is today and making it a desirable neighborhood. And they have everyone I've spoken with have spoken in favor of this development because they have invested a lot in that community. They actually live in the community. Unlike some of the people that we've heard coming forward and unlike some of the people working on the plan, they actually live in that neighborhood, have lived in that neighborhood, have invested in that neighborhood, their families before them. When they were forced, many of us were forced out of the Hill, they moved to that area. And when they moved to that area, they put their blood, sweat, and tears, they opened businesses, they worked really hard, and they did a lot to build Pittsburgh up. And I think now this is the finally a chance for them to see some benefit from that investment in the city. And so when I hear them talking and I hear them speaking, when I hear, really respected names in that community coming forward, then that's who I'm listening to. The people who I know have made Oakland such a desirable neighborhood. And honestly, I think a lot of them would even move back to an area if they had a decent housing. I took a drive there the other day with my husband, as we often do because we still have friends in the area. And just driving through, it looked like it was just the whole area, South Oakland, all looked like it was just student housing now. And it used to be an area where you could raise a family and live there in single-family homes. And I'd love to see that, with this development, return to that area, at least in part. So I just want to say that I think that those are the reasons. I do hear some of the concerns, and everyone knows I'm not a fan of all the things that the developers do in the city. I don't even sit in the meetings because I'm not very good with them. But I do know that with Oakland, the people from Oakland, that I care tremendously about what they're saying. And so for that, I'll vote in favor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members, first round? If not, Councilwoman Gross, your hand is raised. Were you trying to get back in for second round? Okay.
Yes.
Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you. Did you say I could go, Mr. Chair? I couldn't really
Yes,
catch
sorry.
the second part. Thank you. I appreciate it. So I spoke last week about density. I think there are 2 points that people are making about housing. One, that this plan, the 1906 mayor-sponsored plan somehow increases density, but the Oakland plan that we're waiting on does not, and that is not true. As far as I understand, again, I certainly don't represent the area and haven't been at the table, but it's my impression that the Oakland plan has the same increase in density. So it doesn't really speak to passing this bill today rather than waiting for the Oakland plan. But there is a second point I think that some members and some members of the public have spoken to, which is that current housing is substandard, and that it needs to be inspected, that we don't want people living in unhealthy conditions, and I concur. Is demolishing it and building the high-rises proposed here the only way to improve housing? No, it is not. So it's an option for changing housing to demolish in a kind of urban renewal way, right? This feels to me like urban renewal 2022. We're just tear it all down and build this shiny thing that someone makes a lot of money off of. It doesn't mean it will be more dense, frankly. So while the Oakland plan and the mayor-sponsored 1906 plan propose a similar level of density, that doesn't mean that it will be more dense. I would still like someone to convince me that this new construction, I see actual projections of the footprints, the FARs, the required amounts of parking, and the heights, and how many units you could actually put in, here I go again, into this footprint could actually be more dense than, this is 10,000, this darker blue is 10,000 or more people per square mile. And down here, even where people are saying it's, not dense enough and it's not, it needs to be upzoned, even on these steep slopes here, it's currently 5,000 to 10,000 people per square mile. That's very dense compared to parts of the city, and it's definitely very dense compared to parts of Allegheny County, where we see much, as you go kind of lighter blues, you go to much lower densities. This is, I scored way too, I have a very sensitive mouth, I went way too out, but you can see what I'm talking about, right? I think the US is an average of 5,000 people per square mile. So we're well over that, and definitely at levels that support the transit that we're looking for. So while we might want to improve the conditions of the current housing, which doesn't require demolishing it and replacing it, but I think is a really good goal to improve the conditions of the housing there. It's, both, even if everybody wants to demolish and build new, both the Oakland plan and the mayor-sponsored 1906 achieve the new construction allowances and the densities that, again, I'm a skeptic. I see incredibly high densities, mostly because we have very small units crammed into spaces, and that they didn't have parking requirements when they were built, right? And they didn't even have setbacks required when they were built, frankly, right? And so you have, like I have in much of my district, very similar period housing, where, it is in high demand, right? In central Lawrenceville, and lower Lawrenceville, even in upper Lawrenceville, even though there was a lot of demolition there in years gone by, and there's some new construction. But I have areas that are no vacancy, very high density in my district, that were built in the 1860s, 1870s, where the entire property is 12 feet wide. 12 feet. Very, very narrow homes that are in high demand, and people are happy to live there. And they didn't require, people renovated them. Or didn't, and have lived there for 3 generations. So there's more than one way to achieve density. These neighborhoods were built largely before people owned cars, And they were built at high density to allow people access to the trolley car lines. Right? That's how these neighborhoods were shaped. So I'm a skeptic that this like 2022 version of urban renewal is going to achieve higher densities. And I would have to have someone show me that. So density, totally support it. Not sure it's going to happen. Improving the conditions, absolutely support it, but that doesn't require that the area be demolished. The third thing I heard was that there is a desire to see an increase in family housing. Well, I don't see that in the mayor-sponsored 1906. So someone, Mr. Pollack, would you like to point that out? I'm finally going to ask you a question. Thank you for being at the table. But do you see that? And could you point that out to me? Where is the family housing in the mayor-sponsored 1906?
In the zoning language itself, there's no specific provision for that. An array of housing densities or housing types are permitted. If you're asking about the proposed development, the open crossings development proposal, it is apartment units. I don't know the exact floor plans of them all, but I would acknowledge to your point that there are not attached or detached houses, but rather apartments proposed. So I suppose it's somewhat subject to interpretation as to whether those are family units or not, but I acknowledge your point that it's an apartment type.
Are there requirements for senior housing?
There are not requirements for senior housing, no. Senior
Are there
housing,
requirements
some types
for,
are allowed. I'm
are
sorry.
there requirements for units to have more than one bedroom?
I don't recall off the top of my head. I
Right.
believe there may be others on the call who can answer that. If not, I can get you an answer.
Thank you. Here's why I asked, because I had a project that was a 9% LIHTC, deeply affordable, 100% affordable building built on, in my district this happened, I didn't have built it myself, by Action Housing at Penn Avenue in Matilda, which is in Bloomfield, and we had many community meetings. And Action Housing, rather than just build for single residents, did really great research. And because it was a building that had a preference for veterans, they realized that there was a great deal of veteran service members in Western Pennsylvania who were women. And the veterans in Western Pennsylvania who are women often have kids living with them, right? And so while these are units that are affordable, 30% AMI, which is deeply affordable, and the whole building was going to be affordable, every single unit, they set aside a share of the units to not be one bedrooms. Because it's hard to keep, your kids, right, in a crowded condition, right? And so if you're fighting for custody, it kind of becomes an issue, right? And so some of the units they built with 2 bedrooms. So that families could live in them. I think that would also be something that if the community wants and members are supportive of having requirements for family living, which is very helpful for some people. Honestly, again, I have this, our districts are not that different, and certainly Councilman Cross and I don't differ so much in our outlooks on things. We have a lot in common. That there be accommodation. And so that has to be ensured in the allowable construction. And certainly if there's going to be any incentives in place, that can be an ask and a requirement that is put into place, right? I have seniors and I have families, certainly people with disabilities. The original style Pittsburgh single family dwelling with, in my district, 4 sets of steps often, right? Because it's your basement and 3 stories up. These narrow lots especially are not conducive living for, easy accessible living for a lot of our households. And so I can imagine that being the case, but that's not in here. So it may be wishful thinking that it would be nice if it was there, but I don't see it there. So I just wanted to clarify that if it is what people are wishing for, something else needs to happen. So, Mr. Chair, I think I made my 4 points there. So I will also cede my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members, second round? If not, I simply want to sort of iterate to the public that what this body has done has certainly been legal and above board. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. Thank you very much. We will now go back to our first committee of the day, which is Finance and Law, which is chaired by myself. We have one new paper, Bill 452.
Bill 452, resolution authorizing the issuing of a warrant in favor of Lynette Letterman in the amount of $4,000 plus non-economic relief in the form of expanding the scope of the city's no discrimination, no harassment protections to include employees on the staff of the city council members and to attempt to extend the jurisdiction of the PGHCHR to all elected officials, including but not limited to members of City Council in full and final settlement of litigation filed at CHR.
Motion to hold for executive session.
Second.
Yes, second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Bill will be held for executive session. We need a motion to approve the invoices.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Wait, I want to make sure. Did we take off that 7,000?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Just
Invoices are approved. We need a motion to approve the P cards.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? P cards are approved. Need a motion to, no, excuse me. That takes us to our Public Safety Services Committee, chaired by Councilman O'Connor. One supplemental paper, Bill 481.
Bill 481, resolution authorizing the mayor and director of public safety to enter on behalf of the city into a lease agreement or agreements with the Community College of Allegheny County for the property located at 900 and 918 North Lincoln Avenue. The lease agreement shall be at a cost not to exceed $2,147,886.24.
Second.
Second.
Second with discussion.
Discussion, Councilman O'Connor?
No, I have questions.
Mr. Chair, I'll take brief discussion too, please.
Okay. Councilman O'Connor?
Yeah, do you guys want to briefly explain? I assume you're here for this bill, right? CCAC, yeah.
Yes.
So you just want to go through, explain what we're spending the money on, and then being in Councilman Wilson's district, I'll pass it off to him. It's your district.
And please just give your name and title for the record.
Deputy Chief Tom Stangrecki.
Charles Showers, Department Business Administrator for Public Safety.
Yeah, if you just explain the bill, what you plan on doing, and then council members have questions.
Sure. This is a, so we presently have a lease with CCAC to, it's where the Police Training Academy is located on the north side. And this is simply a renewal. It's listed as a new agreement, but it's going to be under the same terms as the old one with a similar rate as the old one. So I'll defer to the chief if there's anything he wishes to discuss further about what goes on there.
Currently, we use CCAC as our training academy for new recruits that are hired to get them their training and get them MOPIC certified. We also do in-service training, defensive tactics. We also have a computer lab for other training purposes, meetings and so forth. And we also host Citizens Police Academy and other events and train other city employees at the academy. Previously, as you may know, we used the Training Academy at 1401 Washington Boulevard. There's been no investment in that facility for some time, and therefore we moved to CCAC. And if you have any
Yeah,
further
I mean, my
questions.
general, and then I'll pass it off to Councilman Wilson. The term, it doesn't say unless it's in the actual longer version of the bill. How many years is it?
It's for another 5 years.
Another 5? Okay, so we did 5, this is another 5. Did the cost change that much
It's
from the original?
apologies. It's
Yeah,
it's a 3% increase year over year. That's what we've been under the previous terms of the lease. So there's really not anything changing here. Just it's really more of an extension than a new agreement. But we're requested just to start fresh.
Okay, I'll pass it off. Councilman, it's your district.
Well,
Sorry,
thanks.
if you don't want to.
I mean,
I'm sorry, I put you on
it is
spot.
my district.
I'm sorry, I put you on
and
spot.
it is a beautiful building that CCAC has there.
No,
What?
President Smith,
Yeah.
sorry, President Smith was next, then Councilman Kraus, then Councilman Wilson.
I'm sorry, I defer to his district.
That's okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you,
no
thank you. I'm sorry, but I actually do have a lot of questions about this. So we're spending this money, I want to be honest, when we first did this, had a little bit of anxiety about it because we were trying to do the public safety training facility. Then we took time and we said that we're going to move the public safety training facility to the VA location. And so I want to be clear, I know this is not you, and you're now the acting chief when you come to the table, not the deputy. So, but I do know that this is not your decision, but I want to say that my concern has been that we are spending this money on leasing instead of purchasing and building and doing what we need to do for the public safety training facility. I know everybody's going to say what's because the money, and right now we have to do something more immediate and on and on and on. But, I'm looking at this versus, millions of dollars to CCAC, a building the public already pays for, and now we're using more public dollars to pay for this facility. And so I think my questions are more towards, and I don't know if Director Pollock's on here or not, but I don't feel comfortable voting for this again. And 5 years is a lot of money. It was $2 million a year, is that what it is?
It's about 400,000 per year, 2 million total.
400 total, okay. 2 million total, okay. But I really don't feel comfortable voting for this again because I think the more we do this, the more we're going to continue to do this. I don't see a way out of this unless we're going to start putting money towards the training facility. And I know that Director Pollock said that they are committed to doing that and committed to putting the money forward. But I just have a lot of concern with leasing this again. We also had the school at Stevens School building that we were going to use for the training for police. That ended up that we didn't have the funding then to do this, but we have the funding to lease again. Do you want to address any of these questions? I don't know.
Sorry, I'm not particularly familiar with the Stevens School situation
Okay.
as far as the
I know that we plan to move into the VA site, but I don't know what the exact timeline is for that, but it will be several years before we have a public safety training center operational.
I know, and you have to have something in between it
Right.
in the meantime. And I do understand that. I just feel like here we are again spending more money on property that we don't own. We own a lot of facilities in the city of Pittsburgh, and I do think CCAC is already paid for by the taxpayers, and so and by the people attending school there. And so I just I'm not sure how I'm going to vote. I'll probably abstain today and get additional information and get a better level of comfort because right now I don't have that. But thank you, and I want to thank you. What a day to come to the table. Your first day, and I'm going to start questioning stuff about what you're doing. But I know that this is not your doing. That this is something more administrative at this point. That they have to make some decisions.
Thank you. Councilman Kraus? I'll come back to Councilman Kraus. Councilman Wilson?
Okay, how much time does the new class, when there's a new police class, how much time do they spend in the building? Like, who takes up the majority of the time inside the building?
It would be the police recruits. Currently, we're still doing some in-service training, defensive tactics, scenario-based training, and other training right now with the the veterans that are here on the force now. The plan is to hire classes and begin at least a basic recruit class and a veteran recruit class if possible. And then they would occupy the space the majority of the time when they're in training, aside from firearms, which is done at over on Washington Boulevard, Highland Park area.
Yeah, I guess it'd be good to know when, if there's going to be a class. I guess majority of the building would be empty.
Oh, it's currently occupied right now. We still are doing training classes. We hope to hear any time now that we'll get the okay for to start a new academy class. And once we're able to hire, we will get them in the CCAC site to begin training.
Okay. Also, this is just a rental, but we're supposed to. The plan is to go up to the old VA site.
That's correct.
Yeah. And so, what's the timeline on that? I know you probably don't have.
I don't have it offhand.
Do we have Director Pollack online?
I know in talking with Director Hornstein before that it'll be several years.
Yeah. Okay, even if. Well, do we have Director Pollack online? No. All right, well, I can get my answer throughout the week. I'm curious on how that plays.
Try to get
5
the answer
years,
for you. Yes.
And the VA, when that build would be done. So, okay, yeah, I guess I just have concerns over who's going to be using the building the bulk of the time in the next, since we don't have any confirmation on when classes are.
Currently, the veterans are using the building. Currently, we're undergoing defensive tactics training.
Can you explain? When you say veterans, you mean veteran police officers
that are on the job now? Yes.
That are on the job now.
The current employees. Yes.
Okay. All right. Any further questions?
Mr. Chair, I apologize. I got called away by a phone call. Mr. Chair?
Sorry, my mic wasn't on. You have the floor, Councilman.
I apologize. I got called away by a phone call. Acting Chief Stan Grecki, good morning.
Good morning.
First, I would like to thank you for your quick response yesterday and around the incident at Orange Street Pool, and I greatly appreciate your professionalism and how you handled that. Thank you. Secondly, forgive me, but I do believe this is a budgeted expenditure that's coming out of our approval of the budget this past fall. I share the concerns with Council President Cale Smith. I think I've made myself clear about my commitment to the training facility and what I believe that brings to not to oversimplify, but to the safety of our officers. Training is everything. And I will always advocate for our officers to be fully equipped and prepared for whatever situation they may find themselves in, to be able to act in a level of professionalism that serves the Bureau and the people that they protect and serve. Having said that, I understand that we need to continue the training facility as we progress to having our own county-wide training facility at the old Veterans facility. So I am going to vote in support of it, but again, share the caution that now we will have invested $5 million, maybe close to $6 million in renting a facility, which could have made a massive difference in capital improvements that need to take place within our proposed training facility. But I don't want to be an obstructionist in any way. I understand the importance of the continuation. It frustrates me, I'd be lying to say that it doesn't, but I understand, and you'll have my full support in voting this ahead. Mr. Chair, if I could go a little off here, I have to leave for a scheduled root canal, and there are a couple of bills coming up. I was hoping Councilman Burgess and I, which are sponsoring the Stop and Frisk, that we might hold that till after the break to give us time for the serious consideration of a lot of conversation around the bill. And also Councilman Wilson and the short-term rental, I'm hoping that we can continue to hold that bill too as we tweak it. I'm not offering to circumvent your committee in any way, shape, or form, but it is such an important piece of legislation. I hope that we will
I know Councilman
hold for further discussion. But with that, Mr. Chair, may I please register aye votes on the remaining bills, and I apologize, I have to step away for a 12 o'clock scheduled root canal.
So noted.
So noted.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Councilman Coghill?
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. I too share sentiments of Councilwoman Kiel Smith, our president. It reminds me a little bit of my daughter paying $2,000 a month in rent living downtown. I finally talked her into purchasing a house. So, so I do share those sentiments. I do support the new facility. I do realize this is a big project. We are certainly years out from having this complete. My concerns go back to, training, our training. I understand we need somewhere to train our veteran officers and certainly the new recruits. New recruits are my biggest concern. I still don't see them. I still don't hear about them. I hear the law department has to give us an okay or something, but that's, to me, is the most important thing, is to have new recruits and somewhere to train them. Certainly we do need the facility to, train. I think, ultimately that the new training facility is going to be great. And it brings me back to something for you to keep in mind, Chief, is our training is amongst the best in the state, if not the country. And it's well known throughout police bureaus throughout. And that's why they come to Pittsburgh and hire our, would-be veterans that and steal them away from us. So I think that we need to put something in writing when a new recruit comes on before we start training them. They either sign on with the city of Pittsburgh for, say, 5 years, or whoever hires them away is to pay the city of Pittsburgh back for the training that we, paid for. Those are my bigger concerns, but I certainly will support, because we do need somewhere to train them. And I think ultimately it's, a little under $2 million, a little over $2 million over a 5-year period?
Yes.
Okay. And hopefully in that 5 years before we have to renew, we have that new facility built. And that's a stretch, I think, because of the sheer mass and size of this operation. But so I'll be supportive today, and I just wanted to add those thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members for first round? If not, second round, President Smith?
Thank you. So the other thing I'm thinking is we also are leasing the steam fitter building for a specialty deployment division.
Yes.
Is there not space in that building that do you know of?
Currently, we're not fully occupied. I know we moved our SWAT units into the one building, and now we're working on the administrative building. We can always look to see if there's a possibility of.
So for my comfort level, I'd like to know how many buildings we're currently leasing. You're not doing shooting here. That's still done on
That's still
Washington.
done off of Washington Boulevard,
Right.
yes.
So you only need basically classrooms, correct?
Classrooms, spaces for any scenarios, computer labs type things.
So I'm going to say that I think we have those kinds of spaces that we're already either currently leasing or that we may have that we hadn't thought about, that we may actually own, including where the URA is on the boulevard. I don't know what kind of space you need, but I'm just wondering if we have it already. And I'm sure people are going to come back and say we don't have the space, but I would feel better if people would look into the actual places that we currently lease or currently own before I vote. So I'll abstain today. But I do understand that you need some space, and you do need, and this will take a long time before the actual facility is up and running. But if we're looking at classroom space, I think that there has to be some space. I'm glad to go look myself at some of the buildings. to see what we have. And as far as, and I agree with Councilman Coghill about having officers, and we looked into this before, agreeing to stay in the city of Pittsburgh for 5 years. I think we have to offer better salary to incentivize, or we have to offer some incentive to come to Pittsburgh in the first place. And I know we can't get reimbursed for the training because it's also the state pays for part of it, because I looked into it before with law. And so the state pays for part of that, so we're not able to get the reimbursement because we'd have to figure out all that, how that was all divided. But we can make a request that that people agree, is the city, the mayor's office in negotiations, I believe, can make something that people have to agree to stay here. So, and I'm happy to hear about doing more with the classes. And I appreciate all that you do, but and I don't want to be an obstacle to what you have to do. I just want to make sure that we're being responsible with the taxpayer money. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation.
Extension.
One abstention.
I need to abstain too, although I am not conflicted to not even have the appearance of impropriety. I will, because I am an employee of CCAC, I will abstain.
Thank you. 2 abstentions, affirmative recommendation. Our deferred paper, Bill 32.
Bill 32, ordinance amending and supplementing the Pittsburgh Code of Ordinances, Title I, Administrative Article 3, Organization, Chapter 116, Department of Public Safety, by adding a new section 116.17, Regulation of Pedestrian Stops by Officers of the Bureau of Police.
Motion to hold 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Can we have a
All
motion to
those in
hold for
favor
public
say
hearing?
aye.
Can we have a motion, because I called for a public hearing and post agenda. Can we hold for the public hearing?
We can do that too. It doesn't go.
We can do that. I was just holding the bill, and then we can call for that afterwards.
Yeah, let's call for it afterwards.
Let's make the motion to hold the bill.
I wanted it held for a public hearing.
I'll defer. I mean, I'm not the sponsor.
Madam President, whatever you like, I'll follow your lead. If you want to hold for those things, that's fine with me.
Thank you, Reverend. Motion to hold for a public hearing, if you don't mind.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Did you want to post
We already
agenda
have a
too?
motion on this to hold for a public hearing and a post agenda.
We already called for that, right?
Yes.
Called for it last week, I think.
Yeah, we
Right.
did call for it before.
Yeah, you've already called for it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm
So
just
it's just
holding
a
the
hold
bill
for
for
2
2
weeks.
weeks.
Okay, sorry. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
So the bill will be held for 2 weeks. That takes us to our new paper, Bill 456.
Bill 456, resolution authorizing the mayor and director of the Department of Public Safety to receive grant funding from the Jewish Healthcare Foundation to support the enhanced HIV testing in the amount of $30,000 and authorizing expenditures for this stated purpose.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. That moves us to our Public Works Committee, chaired by Councilman Coghill. One new paper, Bill 449.
Bill 449, resolution authorizing the mayor and director of the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure on behalf of the city to enter into an agreement with the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership to provide a license for a jointly sponsored street mural and patio area at Strawberry Way.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, discussion.
Discussion, Councilman Wilson?
I mean, I already see it there. Is there?
I was
Yeah, I
wondering
mean, I
the same thing.
understand
I don't know if
what's
it's to
going
redo it, or I don't know exactly.
here.
If somebody's
Is it like
here to answer it,
extended
it'd be
or
great.
do you know?
So,
I mean,
I'm
it's
trying
there.
to, now I can't think of the alleyway. So,
Downtown.
huh? So there's
Strawberry Way.
It'll be similar
Right on Wiener
to,
World.
if you're familiar, coming across from I call it the U.S. Steel Building, but it's now UPMC. And there's an alleyway that takes you to the hot dog shop, where it now has mural and also has some seating and there's some lighting. So
Yeah.
it'd be similar to that.
Oh, it's gonna do the whole Strawberry Way.
I believe so.
So even down by the parking authority property.
Does it extend?
Well, I can ask. So, can I?
Go ahead. Sorry.
Director Lucas, are you familiar with the project?
Everybody, Kim Lucas, Director for GoMe. I do believe that it's actually to update, refresh the existing mural, but this would be just to enter into that agreement with the PDP, and the details of it would be figured out as part of that agreement dialogue.
Okay, because I was just wondering if it was being extended to the portion that's from Smithfield to Liberty, but it doesn't sound like it.
I can get that information for you. I know that there would be time to suss out the details once we're at the draft agreement phase.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Any further, Councilwoman Strasburger?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did see it this morning. It looks beautiful. It looks like it's mostly finished, or at least the portion that was being redone. I am curious, though, that we are just now approving the contract when the work is mostly done. If there's anyone who can explain the process to me, that would be helpful. I was thinking in my head, perhaps this was a piece commissioned by the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership, and we're simply reimbursing them, but I wanted to just get a clearer sense of that since it was brought up by Councilman Wilson.
I believe that this would be an agreement for the ongoing maintenance of it. So not something to establish a partnership where we would be paying for the creation of it. This is just something that will update any terms so that the PDP is responsible for maintaining it on an ongoing basis.
Understood. Thank you. I hope people do go down and visit it. It's something that, I think that placemaking is incredibly important to urban centers, especially downtown these days. And so I do want to say I'm fully supportive, and it's beautiful, and I hope people find it as a comfortable gathering space right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? President Smith?
Yeah, I'm just going to abstain until I know for a fact what we're voting on when I see it in writing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Thank you, Councilwoman, for pointing that out too.
If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation.
Abstention.
One abstention. That takes us to Human Resources Committee, chaired by Councilman Kraus. One new paper, Bill 451.
Bill 451, resolution amending Resolution 21, which will authorize the mayor and Director of Human Resources and Civil Service to extend the contract with the Standard Insurance Company for the administration of the city's employee leave management program by changing JDE information to align with the contract legislation.
Motion to approve.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. That moves us to Land Use and Economic Development Committee, which is chaired by Councilman Wilson. Bill 270.
Bill 270, ordinance supplementing the Pittsburgh Code Title 7, Business Licensing, Article 7, Business Licenses, by creating a new Chapter 768.
Motion to approve. Discussion?
Discussion, Councilman Wilson?
Yeah, I'm going to make a motion here in a second for a hold, but I just want to explain the hold. So, working with the administration on the details of the bill, and I want to address it specifically with members of council. So, in the next coming weeks, members should see an email from my office, talking about getting together and discussing some matters in the bill. That said, make motion to hold for 3 weeks.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Bill be held 3 weeks. That takes us to our new paper, Bill 459.
Bill 459, resolution authorizing the mayor and director of the Department of Permits, Licenses, and Inspections to enter on behalf of the city into an agreement with the Women for a Healthy Environment for the receipt of $45,000 and to assist with organizing renovation, repairs, and painting training for general contractor license holders in connection with the city's lead safe ordinance.
Motion to approve.
Any discussion? Discussion, Councilman Coghill?
Yep. Well, first of all, I want to say I think our guidelines as to what a general contractor should be and shouldn't be are kind of off kilter. I was required to be a general contractor when I'm really not, but I was required to be. So I think we have to look at that in general, but I did talk to the lead folks. I think Councilwoman Strasburger, hooked me up with them. We had a really good conversation. I tried to stress the importance of what it takes to take a contractor out of the field for a day for 8 hours of training. It's very costly to the contractor. I suggested that we find a way to pay the contractor's expenses, at least for the day, at least for lunch or something. I got a notice in the mail that, I'm going to have to take that 8-hour course, which I'm actually looking forward to. I actually, am looking forward to, learning more about it. However, it's a $55 fee for me. I feel like I had a constructive, really good conversation with the folks around surrounding lead, but I don't feel they took my suggestions. So for that reason, I can't support it. But yeah, it's not that I don't feel that lead safety is important. I do. I just don't think they're taking contractors' situations in account enough for me. I left the conversation thinking that we would work this out, but after my initial meeting with them, I haven't heard back from them until I received a notice that it will cost me $55 to go for an 8-hour class. $55 is nothing. It's not my concern. My concern is taking a contractor out of the field and what it costs that contractor. This is their livelihoods. So I think they need to find a better way to incentivize contractors, or general contractors, as they say, to take the course. So that's all.
Thank you. Any other members? Yeah, Councilwoman Gross?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank Director Kinter for being here, and I'd like to bring her to the table too. If you could introduce yourself for the public.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Sarah Kinter, Director of the Department of Permits, Licenses, and Inspections.
Thank you, Director. I'm just kind of actually responding to Councilman Coghill's concerns, because this is something that we have discussed both with the advocacy group and the and between members, and I think public health imperative that we have to make sure we are making homes lead safe. And then how are the various ways we do that with inspection, with permitting, but also with training the people who we allow or regulate, right, and permit to work in homes. So I just wanted to give you, just if you could kind of give us an overview of kind of what we're requiring of contractors.
Yeah, certainly. So City Council passed a comprehensive lead safety bill last November 2021, and PLI has sprinted to enact those requirements by the effective date, which was May 29th, 2022. And one key component of the lead safety bill is requiring general contractors licensed by PLI to obtain the EPA renovation, repair, and painting certification to ensure that construction work is happening in a lead safe manner. When you disturb lead paint during construction work, you create lead dust, which is toxic and it's harmful to young children, and it harms on the job and residents too. So the lead safe work practices control lead dust to protect workers and our residents, and that's what the EPA renovation, repair, and painting RRP certification teaches too. PLI, this bill before you, has a few components. PLI worked with OMB to procure EPA approved trainers who could provide the lowest cost of the EPA RRP trainings for our licensed general contractors. And through that procurement RFP process, we received 2 low bids from Zach Academy and Professional Training Associates to provide training to our licensed general contractors. The full freight cost of training out in the market is about $225. Our low-cost bids came in at $185 to attend training. And this contract before council provides language for a partnership with Women for a Healthy Environment to manage the coordination and marketing of the training schedule for those low-cost trainers and assist customers and general contractors to register and attend the RRP. And it provides a payment from WHE to PLI to subsidize the cost of those trainings, which is why general contractors are receiving that low price of $55. Just to speak a little bit to Councilman Coghill's concerns regarding the 8 hours, certainly I understand, and that's a comment that we get from all of our contractors. But I will note that our electricians, HVAC professionals, fire alarm, fire suppression professionals are also mandated by city code to take at least 8 hours of training annually for continuing education credits that they understand our building codes and our requirements. So this requirement on general contractors actually aligns them with the contracting requirements we see from our other trade licenses. And I would also just like to take the opportunity to thank Executive Director Michelle Nakaradi-Chapkas, Women for a Healthy Environment, for all her partnership and assistance in getting this program up and running, and her commitment to provide improving lead-safe work knowledge and practices in the city.
Thank you, Director. That was very well summarized. You're always very clear, and it's very helpful both to members and to the public. I do want to acknowledge the anxiety, but also the reality of the contractors facing a new set of regulatory requirements for the city, or a new set of permitting requirements, right? I say permitting because we actually issue permits to allow contractors to be able to work. As you referred, we already are requiring certain types of contractors, electrical contractors and others, to meet professional certification requirements in order to have their certifications work in the city. On the same hand, in order that we not just speculate or whether or not this is discouraging certification, could you email members maybe before next Tuesday on kind of like how many professional certifications for each of the subclasses you have, like currently? It is simultaneously true, while this is a critical public health imperative, and Councilman Kalka also acknowledged that we really, really want, and he's supportive, and we all want to reduce lead exposure. We don't want to disincentivize the work getting done properly, or the work getting done at all. Okay, so while I'm supportive of us doing this, let's kind of benchmark ourselves and make sure that we're achieving our goals. So if people choose not to get a city certification in order to avoid this additional regulatory requirement, what happens, and I have constituent emails documenting that this happens, is that, you know, they'll send me photos of a house and it's work that you can see with your own eyes that wasn't permitted at all, right? So people are doing work in homes without permits, without inspections, completely illegal construction work, right? And we don't want to speculate that we've added to that situation, right? Because that is less safe for everybody. So let's just document. Let's make sure. Let's take check of what are, you know, how many contractors and which contractors are certified now, and then if we, you know, maybe there's something else that we can do to adjust our requirements or provide further incentives or do something differently if we see that there's something of concern. And I'm not even sure if I'm anticipating it. Do we see people choosing not to recertify? Do we see fewer people certifying? Now, let's try to keep eyes on it. And because, you know, if we need to change the way we're rolling this out, we can adjust it. Is that something that sounds doable?
Yes, Councilwoman, happy to provide stats on recertifications and renewals for GCs. Also forgot to mention that this certification is a 5-year certification. So once obtained, the re-education wouldn't happen again until 5 years.
That's so great. I'm absolutely, you know, fully supportive today and appreciative of how much work all of you have done and your whole department has done, and so many other people have done to get us to this moment. I'm really eager to see us doing lead safe work and making lead safe homes. But let's also keep an eye on any of the downsides, and then we can, if we see them, we can work to eliminate them. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Anything else from members? Second round, Councilman Coghill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Kinter, you know, I fully understand the education aspect of it, and again, I look forward to, you know, learning as much as I can about it. I guess I'm more concerned about the enforcement of it. I will tell you, as somebody who knows many contractors, they're going to take that class and spend that $55, but I think it's going to be really hard to enforce. I mean, they're doing it, let me tell you, so I would say 90+% of them, me being in that, lesser percent, but they're doing it so they don't have a problem getting permits. They need to have that. Otherwise, you're not going to approve their permits. So how are you going to enforce it? So, say we learn everything we need to learn, but what's to stop that contractor to go to their building that next day and tear into a cloud of lead dust?
That's a great question. First, I will note that the requirement squarely falls on the licensing of the general contractor. So during the building permit process, is it possible for that to happen? Yes. However, after you take the class, and I took the EPA lead dust wipe class. Once you learn more about lead hazards, I think, folks that care about their own safety and the safety of their workers will take lead safe work practices seriously, because there can be real damage to yourself, to others, to residents, and especially the small children. I find that by and large, our contractors want to be good actors. They want to get through the permit process. We do have some bad actors there, and they suck up a lot of our time. But when we look at folks that are trying to get into compliance, we have the same goal, which is to get through the permit process, get through completion, and really turn the wheels of development to improve the built environment for the city. And I've found that contractors and PLI have often been aligned on that.
Yes. I don't want to get into this with you at the table now, but our requirements for general contractor. I had to be registered as a general contractor over a building I bought that's probably less square footage than most of our residential homes, people at this table. That's not a big deal to me, and taking the lead class is not a big deal to me. The $55 is not, but the extra insurance premium is a big deal to me, for me to be registered as a general contractor. So I'm not sure what your guidelines are as to what, is that a state mandated? Is that our own policy? But I don't feel, a small place like I purchased, that I should have to be, certified as a general contractor, even though it's in a, business corridor. I mean, what constitutes a general contractor having to be licensed as a general contractor? Is it because they're in the business district? Is it because the square footage, or what guidelines do we go by? And are they mandated by the state, or are they just our own?
Yeah, great question. So Title VII, the general contractor license, is required for anyone performing Title X work, building, construction work. So if you are doing a minor alteration permit up to new construction, you require a general contractor license. There's an exemption for folks that receive or obtain from the state the home improvement contractor license, which is really for residential minor alteration and additional alteration work. There are state insurance requirements for that HIC license, and I believe the threshold is, I want to say $50,000, but I will double check for you, Councilman, and get you that information. There's also a state law regarding workers' compensation that the city must adhere to, and general contractors must adhere to, that we ensure is enforced through the licensing provision.
Okay, I love the work that you're doing with PLI. I love the red tape that you cut out previously regarding, I can't remember what it was around, but any red tape is cutting is good for me. Certainly we want to do it in a safe manner. I'd like to have this conversation more offline, I guess, and just give you concerns from a contractor's point of view. Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you. Any other members? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
One no. Affirmative recommendation. That takes us to Bill 465.
Bill 465, ordinance amending the Pittsburgh Code Title 5, Traffic, Article 7, Parking Chapter 549, Residential Parking Permit Program, 54908, visitors permits, non-residence permits, so as to relate the issuance of residential parking permits for short-term rentals to the issuance of licenses by the Department of Permit Licenses and Inspections, authorizing the operation of short-term rentals in the city.
Motion on hold for 3 weeks.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Bill be held 3 weeks. That takes us to Innovation, Performance, and Asset Management Committee, chaired by Councilwoman Strasburger. One supplemental paper, Bill 485.
Bill 485, resolution further amending and supplementing Resolution 539 as amended, entitled authorizing the mayor, city clerk, and/or director of the Department of Innovation and Performance to enter into a contract or agreements with Granicus, Inc. for software upgrades, server hosting services, annual maintenance of Legistar agenda management, and video streaming in order to extend the contract an additional 12 months for an additional cost of $60,935.03.
Motion to approve, brief discussion.
Second.
Councilwoman?
Thank you. I'd like to call Laura Dragowski to the table if she's available.
.485 is the city clerk's office, agenda management.
I apologize. Yep, I'll reserve that call to the table for the next bill. I got ahead of myself here in my own notes.
That's our bill. I know, that's why I asked him.
No worries.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. New papers, Bill 457.
Bill 457, resolution authorizing the mayor and director of the Department of Public Safety to enter on behalf of the city into a professional services agreement with Gelada for software subscription-based client relations management services at an overall cost not to exceed $139,980.
This time, motion to approve, brief discussion. Thank
Second.
you. Apologies again for the confusion. I have my own notes in front of me, and I was getting ahead of myself. The reason I wanted to stop and pause and discuss this bill is because my understanding is that this is to pay for a new database system for the Office of Community Health and Safety. And it gets into a lot of the work that the staff there, the growing staff there are doing, working with fire, working with EMS, and needing new ways to be able to track their work in the co-response model. So, social workers, other people responding along with public safety officials at various calls. So, Laura, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and just telling us a little bit about the ins and outs of what this database will do and why it's necessary, I think it will also help us understand where, the office is right now and what stage you're at.
Thank you, Councilperson Strasburger, and thank you to council members. My name is Laura Dragowski. I'm the manager of the city's Office of Community Health and Safety. Just quickly checking, I ran out to get lunch, and I want to make sure that you all can hear me. Is that okay? I think you're all very familiar with our office, but maybe not as familiar with some of the progression of the work. Our office is focused on sort of three areas of collaborative response and public safety coordination. The first is how do we preempt situations that might result in a crisis? The second is how do we respond to those situations with the right responder, trauma-informed, safety paramount. And the last is how do we stabilize a situation such that there isn't recurring engagement with public safety, which we do see, our public safety professionals do see a lot of. So we have presently, actually, we just hired our fourth social work staff member, and by the end of July, we'll have 6. Up until this time, our social workers have principally been working with fire, the Bureau of Fire and the Bureau of EMS on what Dr. Roth, our program manager, calls the high utilizer program. So this is an opportunity for either a firefighter liaison and a social worker, or a community paramedic and a social worker, depending on the level of medical acuity and complexity that someone is experiencing, to follow up with a patient who's been referred by their peers in fire, police, or EMS, and to work with that person to stabilize the situation. I will say we predominantly work with our older neighbors who have been living in some, as I'm sure you all know, based on your work with the community, have been living in really deplorable, unsafe conditions. And we want to make sure that we're preserving their dignity, their safety, allowing them to age in place. That can range from situations of hoarding, pending evictions, to people who just don't have access to regular medical care and have to rely on our emergency medical services for, say, a nebulizer or some other treatment on a very frequent basis. It also does range into the mental health complexities that we see in our community. To this time, our work with fire, we worked with just under 300 people over the last 6 months. During that time, we reduced the fire call for the patients involved by 92%, and for EMS patients by 74%. And what's important is not the reduction in the call volume alone, but rather the stabilization of a person's situation, the promotion of their dignity, their safety, their ability to stay in their home, which we know aging in place is really critical for well-being and preservation of community. We are about to embark, and we are planning this out with Chief Stan Grecki to embark on co-response pilots. That will involve social workers and officers responding to calls, initially in more of a ride-along, support assisted capacity, but ultimately as the primary response over time in coordination with the county emergency services. But we want to make sure that, again, we have the right responder, we're making sure that people are safe, and we give people the time that's needed to de-escalate or address any issues that may be occurring. We know we have very few officers, a dwindling number of officers who are stretched in many ways, and we do need, in many of these cases, a lot of time for people. So this all brings us to the point that we need a way to collect this information, store this data. We have social workers, licensed professionals who need to, for ethical reasons, and for just documentation purposes, to have a safe storage location for the information. We are very intentional about not putting that into the existing Public Safety Bureau databases. So APRS, which is migrating to RMS, that really is criminal justice information. We do not want to conflate substance use, behavioral health, or other HIPAA protected information. On the EMS side, a lot of these cases don't involve EMS, and EMS is really geared to a medical EMS response. There's a lot of psychosocial elements to this work. And then fire, has, I think, a relatively small deployment that wouldn't be appropriate either. And we do feel like this information that needs to be kept separate from the vast majority of our public safety professionals who wouldn't otherwise have contact with these individuals. So as such, our operations administrator had set up about 8 demos for us with different software. The CRM, which, forgive me, I think is customer relationship management software that's been kind of retrofitted to work in the human services space. It doesn't, of the software demos that we received, none of them worked with public safety. They were all very social services oriented, which is good, but much more focused on referrals and not so much focused on the public safety information. Gelada was the, it ended up being the last database that we did look at. It was recommended by Johnston County, Kansas, and a number of other co-response programs across the country. Not only does the database store information in a way that's very accessible to our social workers and has the relevant information, it integrates with other public safety databases, so we would be able to pull information over if there were proper agreements. It will integrate with electronic health records at the hospitals, which could give us an opportunity for better data sharing between the hospital institutions and public safety in whatever direction would be safest for that patient. And it allows us to pull CAD information, so that allows us to take in the direct dispatch information and create instances of a patient such that we don't have to go in and recapitulate that after the fact. We not only will I say that our social work team and our first responders are very excited about it, but in our conversations across the country, this is software that's highly adaptive and really built for what we're doing. And I think it's worth noting that we have this extremely important partnership with Roots, the Allegheny Health Network program. which will ultimately evolve into, not just the assisted response and outreach, but also into our alternative response program. And this is also a system that will allow for their documentation. One of the things that unfortunately we do see is sometimes information sharing about people can result in increased vigilance by healthcare providers regarding law enforcement involvement. So we do need to be sensitive about the fact that we don't want to share criminal legal involvement in the healthcare environment without a patient's consent. So we do need separate databases that will allow for the ethical, high fidelity storage of this information as well as ready access to it.
Thank you. That was a great summary and exactly what I was looking for. I mean, as council members, we spent so many hours discussing issues surrounding this exact office model, other aspects of public safety in 2020 and 2021. So I wanted to make sure that this was a vehicle for hearing an update on what was implemented and how it's going, since, oftentimes the public scrutiny fades, but the work remains and the work continues. So thank you for that update. And I'm happy to support this, what sounds like an important technical piece of the work.
Thank you. Any other members? Council President?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I just personally want to thank Laura for her work because over the weekend, I don't know if she wants me telling this story, I called her about 10 o'clock at night on a Saturday night because someone had called me. There was someone who was homeless who needed help. And just so the public knows, when we find that out, we typically offer help. Or if we hear somebody at public comment, either Laura goes out and helps those people that came to the podium, or one of the members or our staff will go out. We never let somebody walk away without trying to offer some kind of help. You may not see it, but it might happen out in the hall. But Laura went out at 10 o'clock at night and walked 3 blocks in Uptown to find a place for a person to stay overnight. So I just want to thank her for that and for her always being so readily available to council to help the public.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gross?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me get rid of that thing. I also similarly want to say thank you to the director while she's here because she and I also had a long conversation a few weekends ago about one case, and then while we were talking about trying to get help at one location, we also recapped for years of experience working on another case with an individual also in my district. And I think that's kind of relevant to today's discussion, Director. So, in that long conversation we had, I think it's on a Sunday, that you were recounting knowing a street homeless person who you've known for years and who have had repeated attempts to help in different ways. And so I guess I have a professional curiosity about the database. And when we say case, we also do casework in our city council department offices, but they're about constituent issues that are really constrained to things that are under the core jurisdiction of our departments, like the abandoned cars or the kind of building violations or noise complaints, everything from garbage to kind of core things. But your office has really got trained social workers, as you mentioned. You mentioned ethics, and I think that you also mean like privacy and the separation with the police records and this new software. But maybe if you could just also recount a little bit how the social work definition of a case is really like following an individual and their various needs. But then also, not to be confusing my question here, but I'm really curious about like how you're doing the record keeping. Is it an app on devices, portable devices? Is it like you're taking field notes and then going back to an office computer? If you could touch on that, because I'm just curious. Thank you.
Sure. Councilperson Gross, thank you. And also Council President Cal Smith, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure and a privilege to help in any way we can. Maybe I do want to preface by saying the vast majority of the work for people experiencing homelessness and in kind of these precarious situations, I have to give all credit to the Roots program. Very often, I think I am put in a position to sort of report back on what's being done, but really those formative relationships and sometimes those really hard moments, hard conversations are rarely what I'm doing, and very often what our partners do there, and it's really difficult work. And I know that especially for all of your staff, you're certainly encountering people in these really difficult situations as well. It's traumatic, and then I don't know the dissonance between people saying just disappear these people from the world, and then realizing these are human beings who are struggling and are deserving of our care and support. It's hard to reconcile those. In answer to maybe the more specific question, Councilperson Gross, right now we have a HIPAA compliant Excel sheet in a SharePoint database or SharePoint site. We've worked with Innovation Performance to put that together. We're very grateful for them making that possible. Of course, we did need to have some minimum security and protected health information considerations in that system, but it's really not a system, it's a spreadsheet, and it does create a great deal of risk for inadvertent data loss or misattribution of information. I have the full confidence in our colleagues that they are double and triple checking everything, but it is not a sustainable solution, and in fact it's something that we've asked them to do too long now. So when social workers in particular are documenting, they do have minimum documentation standards. There are situations in which they are not going to fully document a case because they are subject to subpoena. So they document in a way that's adequate to reflect what's been done, what needs to be done, what that person or patient has expressed or experienced, but they are also careful not to include information that could be harmful to that individual in the future. Now, that's not to be said if someone acknowledges that they've committed an offense or harmed someone. It is the responsibility of our colleagues to make sure that there is an appropriate investigation of that situation. They do preface those engagements with the public with that information, but we do have, I would say, a balance between information that will allow our colleagues to continue to work with that person, but not expose them to unnecessary risk. In terms of, Councilperson Gross, you mentioned what is it to have a case, and very often in our public safety infrastructure, as you pointed out, it's more of you respond to a scene, you respond to an address, you respond to a particular manifestation of an issue. And I think we've heard this loudly from our first responders that the issues that they're encountering are oftentimes enduring, chronic, recurrent, and that the model that we have in public safety doesn't afford them the ability to build a relationship, address the issue, mitigate the issue. The tremendous benefit of our social work colleagues, who are all just exceptional people and professionals, is that they do build trust. Sometimes the whole purpose, and we could say this about the Roots team as well, is just to build enough trust for someone to disclose something that they need. And that's the beginning of a change in that person's circumstance. And so some people, it's a few calls, and some people, I know that, Dr. Roth began piloting this with Lieutenant Horosky from Fire in Q3 of last year. And there are a few people that Dr. Roth is still working with. Now, the city is not in a position to rebuild the infrastructure of the county and of human services. I think Councilperson Wilson has referred to it as building bridges and addressing gaps. So what we see is this major chasm between the public safety response and the access to human services, and what our professionals are doing is trying to bridge those gaps so that people can access what we hope will be very robust and supportive services. And we do try to be also advocates for improvement in those services on behalf of the clients and patients with whom we work, but also to work with our first responders so that they don't feel this, burnout, compassion fatigue, responding to the same situation on an ongoing basis without adequate tools to address it. Councilperson Gross, I don't know if there were some other questions I missed there, but please let me know.
Sure. I think that you framed the kind of police and public safety, again, institutional legacy response is to a situation, as you said, right? And even the records and the structure of their databases, I believe, I have eyes on them, would not allow us to follow the history or arc of a person, or even to look at all of the different touch points that a person, an individual has had, which is fundamentally different than a contact relationship management person. That's literally the tool to help you understand. Every single entry has to be attached to an individual, right? It's completely different. So even when we talk so much at times about institutional bias, even institutional sexism, institutionalized racism, here, I mean, it's even built into the information systems in that it's the individual is negated in the structure of the softwares, right? And we're in here and in social work and in the software that you're choosing, it's centered. The individual is centered, individual's history, right? And so we're going to be able to, we're giving you a tool here, and you've found a tool, you're looking for a tool that can help you do what we've tasked you with, which is to really center the individual and be able to see them in all three dimensions and in all their history. And so I just, again, kind of a geekiness or professional interest in the different ways that we even structure information systems based on the questions we're trying to answer. And so I just wanted to point that out. We've had the same frustrations in my own office, right? I've been tracking hopefully we strive to track every single call that comes into the office. Even if the question is, is tomorrow my recycling day or not? Log it in. I always log it in anyway, right? And so we've built, because council has not bought itself contact with CRM software. There's some generic CRM software in our Outlook package, which we tried and rejected in previous years. This is just a frustration for me that I'm just going to take the opportunity to share. I've had Excel sheets, I've had Google Sheets. We even have a pretty fancy one that we worked with INP. My staff person who just left, that we'll dearly miss, structured a form that you can fill out that populates to a spreadsheet. And yet still, it's not a CRM. So if I said, I know that woman has been calling, just a hypothetical, constituent. I know I've talked to that constituent, every 6 months about that issue for the last 8 years. It's hard to see that in the digital format. And so it's constantly, me and my staff is probably rolling their eyes and laughing back there listening to council today, because I'm listening in from the other room and I'm hearing them talk to constituent A, and I'm like, constituent A, look back in 2014, look back in 2015. I'm like shouting at them to look at other spreadsheets, because there's no way of keeping all of those records. And I'm constantly saying, what we really need a CRM to get that case history out of my brain, because it's not necessarily in their brain. So it's really going to help you moving forward too, in case, so it doesn't all have to be in your brain. And if the staff changes, or there's just different staff who've encountered the same person, they'll be able to see, I hope, all of the information that's needed attached to the person who needs the help. So you can respond to that. Again, I just kind of have my own personal, bee in my bonnet to share about information systems.
I think everything you said is right. I think what we're really hoping to allow the tool, the documentation tool, the record management tool to match the quality of service we're providing. I think, as we enter into the partnership with Roots on a longer term basis, we also recognize that the people who do direct service don't have time to enter something 3 times into a database, look for something for 30 minutes. It's an unfair burden that we're putting on people who are doing, I think, the most complicated and the hardest work. So it really does need to be a tool that's not retrofitted to give us a low-cost option, in spite of the fact that I know we need to be good stewards of funds. And I think we've found a really good balance here.
Well, my other question that I forgot was the how does it physically work? Do you have it on smartphones? Do you have it on what are the interfaces?
So it's web-based, so you're able to access it on a phone, a tablet, a computer. A really, I think, excellent feature that we'll be working through is others, not just in public safety, but in council, OMI, 311 would be able to put referrals in. Now, of course, we'll have to work through those pathways. Right now, we're working on those pathways with OMI and PLI. But when we have this database, we'll have a firm referral pathway so that we won't lose people in the mix of 17 emails, and it gets just lost in the mire. And I think the other important thing is it allows us to be more vigilant about following up with the referrer. So, Councilperson Gross, if you said, we have this person, Laura, and she really needs some help. I think very often, because the help even may come, but we don't close the loop. And so I think one of the really important pieces is this will give us that ability to even sometimes automate some of that loop closing, so that we will at least let you know we followed up, and then we can give you more detailed information in the most HIPAA appropriate way.
Appreciate it. I'll stop my questions there. I thank you for being here. And again, thank you for being so responsive.
Thank you. Any other members for discussion?
No.
Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Where are we at? That moves us to Bill 458.
Bill 458, resolution amending Resolution 268, authorizing the mayor and directors of the Department of Innovation and Performance and Public Safety on behalf of the city to enter into an agreement with OST Inc. for short-term emergency professional IT staffing resources as needed to fulfill a number of critical IT and device-related projects by increasing the funding for additional projects.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. That takes us to our Intergovernmental Affairs Committee, chaired by Councilwoman Gross. One deferred paper is Bill 376.
Bill 376, resolution amending Resolution 661 entitled Resolution amending Resolution number 432 entitled Resolution authorizing a corporation agreement with the city and the URA and the Pittsburgh Land Bank to provide for future shared administrative services and the transfer of property among agencies for governmental redevelopment and portfolio management purposes by providing for city council review the policies and procedures of the Pittsburgh Land Bank pursuant to 174A13D of the Pittsburgh Code of Ordinances to authorize an amendment to the corporation agreement.
I'm going to motion to hold for a minute, but motion to approve for discussion.
Second.
Second.
Discussion.
So we held this, but simultaneously, Councilwoman Smith separate motion for
She froze.
Oh, no.
She froze up.
today.
Oh, no.
That's, can you hear me?
You froze
Telling me-
you froze for a moment, Councilwoman Gross, so we did not hear what you said.
I apologize. You know what? I could reach over and try to plug my computer in better. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Okay. So separately, last week, Madam President motioned for a public hearing and post agenda. But we would like to hold this pending the public hearing and post agenda. So we're not motioning for new public hearing and post agenda, but we would like to hold this bill until those things occur. So rather than hold for a number of weeks, I'm going to motion to hold pending the already requested post agenda and public hearing. I think I said that. Thank you.
That's what I tried to do before. So can I make a second?
What's the motion?
I second. I thought I seconded.
Well, can you just restate your motion? It wasn't a formal.
So, right. I would like to hold this bill, motion to hold this bill, pending the already motioned public hearing and post-agenda. So I think, Madam Clerk, so we can just hold for post-agenda and public hearing, but those have already been motioned and approved in a
We
separate
already called
week.
for a public hearing and post-agenda. She's saying, can we hold it?
Okay. So her
I don't
motion.
think that
Until
that's
those take
confusing. I mean,
place.
it doesn't confuse me linguistically, right? We're just holding for the public hearing and post-agenda.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The bill will be held until the already motion hearings have commenced. New papers, Bill 450.
Would you do something different? Wait, I want to make sure we're clear. Would you do something different?
No,
I get a point of clarity here.
Sure. So previously, Councilwoman Smith called for a public hearing on this matter. Councilwoman Gross has now said for a hold until that hearing occurs.
It's not scheduled yet.
I don't believe so.
Okay,
So it
that's
could-
what I was
So this
curious.
could be held 1 week, 2 weeks, 3
it's not
weeks, a
scheduled
month, or until after recess.
So it will come back the following.
Once the public hearing is held.
All right.
Bill 450.
Bill 450, resolution adopting plan revision to the City of Pittsburgh's official sewer facilities plan for the Arsenal Park, 254 40th Street.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Before moving on to our meeting announcements, I want to try to go back to Mr. Mark Olinietz, who I believe has called in to the meeting and tried to stay with us this entire time for public comment. Are you with us, Mark?
I feel bad.
And it appears he unfortunately is still unable to reach us. With that, next week, council will hold our regular and standing committee meetings on Tuesday, June 28th and Wednesday, June 29th, respectively. Speaker registration closes at 9 a.m. Tuesday and Wednesday mornings. On Tuesday, June 28th at 6 p.m., council will hold a public hearing on Bill 437 as it relates to adopting the reapportionment plan for the city council districts. Registration closes at 3 p.m. June 28th. On Wednesday, June 29th, council will hold a briefing with sessions at 2 and 3 p.m. on updates from the proposed annexation of Wilkinsburg committee members. To register to speak at these meetings and hearings, please fill out the sign-up form on the council meeting webpage. You may also call the city clerk's office at 412-255-2138 or email cityclerksoffice@pittsburghpa.gov. Is there anything else from members? If not, we were all present. Yeah, need a motion to approve the minutes and adjourn the meeting.
Moved.
Second.
We are adjourned.